Journeys Ahead. Lore. Entry 1. Matira and the First Sparks. Written and narrated by T.S. Proart. Before there was anything, there had been nothing. An infinite void of darkness and disorder. Until inevitably, there had been what many refer to as the Big Bang. An event caused by something that not even the higher forms of life could explain. From this release of energy, there came with it a sea of universes, an omniverse with clusters of realities within them. As these reality formations bloomed, they weren't conjoined together as most believe the concept of the omniverse to be. Rather, it was an ocean of many omniverses, millions to trillions of masses forming apart from one another with their own unique designs and rules, each with their own gods, worlds, and more importantly, creation stories. Within one of these omniversal clusters, a trio of divine beings were created through the Big Bang's omnicellular essence. They were the writer, the narrator, and the designer. These three beings would come to be known as the Beyonders, the almighty gods of this specific omniverse, where the stories you all know and love take place. It may come as no surprise that these titans were the first forms of life with gifted godhood, manifested through the very fabric of their interconnected universal life. With their birth, they were also granted the will of creation itself. With this power, they began to create and design the endless abyss that they had been born into. Through their vision, variants of existence bloomed, universes of countless origins and reflecting stories, all while they built, watched, and admired what they had created with a sense of love. However, as time went on, the Beyonders soon began to realize that they themselves couldn't fully mandate the worlds below them on their own. They couldn't control the smaller aspects to all realities compared to the grand image roles they inadvertently backed themselves into. They needed offshoots, beings who could help focus upon the little things, as opposed to themselves. And so, they began to forge entities who could handle the smaller things in their omniverse, forces that could have been equivalent to what one would call children. From the spaces between all realities, an essence known as light matter and dark matter swelled, making up the good and bad within all living things. This energy was both strong and deadly. If used in the wrong way, matter could be catastrophic to any world, whether light or dark. To maintain and control this form of power, the Beyonders created a being that sparked to life in a glistening shine. A creation that could manage and control the powers of the very light and dark itself. The being they crafted was divine yet elegant. She was a true beauty among almost every single one of their creations. She had glistening eyes, luscious wings, and above all, a good heart. The Beyonders, in her creation's sake, decided to name her Matira, the first of what would become the Sparks. Matira in her early life was excited, expressive, and innocent. She was curious about everything her eyes would rest upon, especially how the omniverse worked. From the Beyonders, she was taught the ways of existence and even gifted her own realm, a dimension just a layer beneath the Beyonders' own plane of eternal life. It was a space that was made from both aspects of her being. An upper heaven she grew to call the Soleus, a center space she named the Cosmic Limbo, and a darkened hellscape she dubbed as the Shades. For many years, Matira ruled this so-called matter realm, keeping balance in check for trillions of years. Over time, the Beyonders felt as though she had grown responsible enough to be on her own, and so they left to tend to their own plane of creation for the rest of eternity. This left not just Matira, but many of their children on their lonesome, leaving them to rule and heavy lift what the parents had started. Following the years to come, Matira both balanced matter and watched life grow from within all corners of the omniverse. Through this, she witnessed both life and death occur, sadness and love, glee and hate. She bare witness to families being formed, rivalries being fought. As more years went on by, the Matter Goddess slowly grew lonely and tiresome in her solo position. Without the Beyonders at her side, the goddess began to desire the need, or rather a want, for a family, spurred on by the very life she watched over. With her godly gifts, Matira manifested a new source of power for herself, an artifact that could create beings from the very matter she controlled. Within the center of her chest, the goddess formed her own source of life, the Eye of Creation, or rather, a compacted version of her very soul essence. Using this new organ, Matira was able to forge two children from the parts of her own being, a son of light matter and a daughter of dark matter, which in the end halted Matira's power to make anything else, for an incomplete soul could not do as such. They were aspects of her, as she was aspects of them. The son she named Seraphim, and her daughter Darfian. As these twin children grew, Seraphim ultimately became the one who controlled most of the light, while Darfian controlled most of the dark, leaving Matira as the all-watching force for years to come. Eventually, the children of Matira crafted children of their own. Using their own eyes of creation gifted from their mother, Seraphim had 3 sons and 1 daughter of light. Bolganoth, a divine angel, Leflora, a holy bloom, Rhodos, a fighting divinity, and Sabarath, a divine tinkerer. Like her brother, Darfian created her own kin as well, 2 daughters and a conjoined triplet son of the dark. Revara, a soul conductor, Elbris, an eternal flame, and Vetrix, a star surfer. From these children, smaller matter forms of life took shape in their own eyes. Angels and demons, beasts the likes of dragons, and gentle critters akin to small mammals. From the angels and demons, they too began to spawn their own offspring, which would become the very generations of sparks, the ones we know, or rather knew, today. Like any life form, the sparks started off as small and primitive, until inevitably evolving into horn-crested orb-headed beings, who could create their own bodies from the materials around them. They learned how to connect to plants, stones, and all sorts of natural things, before inevitably learning how to craft and form mechanical bodies akin to their creators. By this point, the Beyonders were out of the picture. For all the sparks knew, Matira and what had now become her pantheon were the true creators at hand. Matira, her children and grandchildren, felt it necessary to keep the Beyonders' tails away from their growing species, as for such a young race, it wouldn't have been right to burden them with such cosmic knowledge. For many millennia, the sparks lived within the realm of the gods, worshipping them and in turn being loved back by both their bright and dark lords. They all coexisted as friends, as family. This would be documented as the sparks' time among the gods, a time for love and joy. It was heaven, as one would put it. Yet, within this period of grace, Matira soon began to see a growing shift of sorrow within the Omniverse. Through the world she and her offspring balanced, she watched as senseless war and trouble arose, pointless death, endless tragedy, for too many worlds to count. For a being that was primarily made for balance, it was difficult to watch the darkness and sorrow overtake the light of life. This haunting imagery began to chip away at Matira's heart. The Beyonders above didn't seem to care for what they had made. In fact, it seemed as though it didn't matter in their eyes. In a way, Matira felt as though she could have done more, to be the one to step up. This is when an idea bloomed that would change the race of her kind forever. All of them, sparks included, were beings who could traverse between worlds and enact things that most other living creatures couldn't. They were multiversal, as one would put it. They had the power to help those who couldn't help themselves. The pure heart of Matira was something that drove her decisions, a calling that led to her listening into her soul more often than she would like to admit. Within time, Matira and her sparks decided that they had to step in. They together created tech and magic, the likes of which nobody had ever seen. Portal openers, Nova Rune spells, energy blades, and so on and so on. Within time, with Matira and her children's commands, the sparks turned from a peaceful race into a powerful force of freedom fighters, soldiers to help keep realities that couldn't defend their own safe. They designed a symbol based on the god's mark, an upside-down triangle crest, a spark crest, to signify the power to conjoin upon a tip, an image to reflect the balance of light and dark, but more importantly, a symbol of peace and uniting as one. This decision from Matira quickly evolved into a new way of life. The sparks who chose to fight did so by the god's commands. If casualties arose, their souls would be judged in the cosmic limbo, and either be sent to the shades to become a dark matter demon, or the Soleus to become a light matter angel. Like most religions and mythologies, sparks were also judged for their acts in life. Sparks were of free will like all sentient beings, and had the ability to either do good or bad in their living state. Minus their code, it was necessary for sparks to be judged like any conscious soul come the time of death. Yet, if the fallen still wished to fight, be it as a demon or an angel, they would be granted the choice to become a Valkyrie of the gods, an eternal fighter for the matter realm and its creators. For demons, it would mean battle for eternity, but for angels, their decisions came with the option to eternally rest whenever they so wish, be it dying again on the front lines, or hanging the Nova Runes up for good. As time went on, the sparks grew into something more outside of their gods. They made a home in an offshoot dimension outside of the matter realm, a plane they called Niflheim. Within time, the matter gods and sparks physically separated, but their stories and code remained interlocked through old text and ancient stories. The sparks would continue to fight, but thrive for many more years to come, while the matter gods stayed in their own spectral realm to watch and control the very things they were created for. In a way, history had repeated itself. Like the Beyonders, Matira felt it necessary to sit back and let her creations do the heavy lifting. She and her family had roles to fulfill as well, but this shift in protecting realities became a deep-rooted belief in their established mythology. Sparks were practically born to live like all other souls, but were also born to fight. For only they could defend the innocent who could not. For the gods, it was considered as a holy blessing, a gift to befall those who prayed up to the ones above, the ones who would never reply. Their creation soon had a saying, "For those we lost, and for those we honor." A quote that the matter gods always found rather admirable as they sat atop their thrones and watched for the remaining years to come.